It's Monday night, and you know what that means. The Jersey First Television Network proudly brings to you the latest edition of Real Talk, and certainly I am the generational talent in Garden State Media, folks, and I continue to be your source for trustworthy, fearless, independent journalism right here in the state of New Jersey. That's right, folks. It's me, Fernando Uribe. Happy Monday. Happy August to all of you here as you're joining us on this, the 4th of August in 2025. I want to thank you all for tuning in from wherever and however you may be doing so on any of your social media platforms. Of course, we appreciate you making this a part of your Monday night viewing. And folks, listen, I just can't say enough about the support that I continue to get from all of you every single week that continue to share the programming, that continue to just, like, comment, and subscribe to all our great content here. And if you've not done so already, take a moment, please, to like us on Facebook, of course. Make sure you like Fernando Uribe, Real Talk with Fernando Uribe, and Fernando Uribe Media on Facebook, of course. Follow us on Instagram and X, certainly on our YouTube page. Click that little bell, and you'll be automatically subscribed to all our great content that we bring you here every single week on the Jersey First Television Network. And whether you get your podcast on Spotify or SoundCloud, download Jersey First, and you get to listen to brand new episodes of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe via Jersey First TV. So whether you're going down the shore for Tiki Mondays, of course, down in Point Pleasant, maybe you're going food shopping, maybe you're going, shopping for clothes. The upcoming fall semester's coming. A lot of you parents out there are going to be moving your kids back to campus soon. Hey, you probably always have your smartphone with you. Make sure you take Jersey First with you throughout the summer weeks. And folks, again, I can't say enough about what a privilege it is to be obviously front and center on Jersey First TV. Certainly we'll keep bringing you all the big discussions and conversations that matter in today's media climate here in New Jersey. And folks, I keep saying all the time, as the establishment media in New Jersey continues to lie to you all the time, guess who never will? That's right, me, Fernando Uribe, and we appreciate you showing support for Real Talk on Jersey First TV. Folks, you want to stick around for final thoughts? I have a lot to say about really bad journalism in New Jersey, or really propagandists masquerading as journalists. And of course, when that comes to mind, we can always rely, of course, on Leonard Filipowski. But even before that, folks, you'll be happy to know that in the month of July, once again, all organic traffic, over 47,000 views between Facebook, X, and all our other shows. Again, without you, my loyal viewing audience, it would not be possible. So we'll talk a little bit about that later also as well. As I mentioned before, folks, again, when we talk about bad journalism, we talk about, obviously, propagandists like Leonard Filipowski, who thinks it's appropriate to harass elected officials and other community members and call himself a journalist. Well, we've all come to learn that he's not. And certainly after this recent primary here in Hudson County, we know that any benefactor of his or the money train, well, it's running pretty dry. So as you can see on his social media, Leonard Filipowski is urgently asking for donations, as they say. And certainly I think many are looking to see his demise in the immediate future. Also, folks, during final thoughts, I'll give you a breakdown of what's going on in Jersey City. The mayoral race is heating up here. Obviously, we have some great coverage between the Jersey City Times, Hudson County View, and other news outlets. I'll tell you where, well, to be very honest, why some operatives are trying to control the narrative about candidates. I'll tell you what's fact and fiction coming up during final thoughts here in Hudson County, of course, in the upcoming Jersey City mayoral race. So you definitely want to stick around for that later on in the broadcast. Folks, it is election season. Of course, we're talking about a lot of municipal races here on Real Talk. Of course, some county races, some legislative races, but the big one certainly is our gubernatorial race coming up in just a few months. And without a doubt, obviously, Democrat Mikey Sherrill and Republican Jack Ciarelli are on a collision course this November, and a lot is being said about their campaigns, their messaging, who they're supporting, who's supporting them. Well, you know what? There's a lot to sort of unpack and dissect during this election cycle, and who better to ask than really, I would argue, the GOAT of journalism right now in New Jersey media, folks. He's a distinguished editor of the New Jersey Globe. He's my good friend, and thankfully, he's a fan of this program. I can't say enough how grateful I am to have his time tonight. Folks, he's the great David Wildstein joining us live right now on Real Talk. David, how are you?
I'm well, Fernando. Thanks for having me on again.
By the way, folks, if you don't subscribe to the New Jersey Globe on YouTube or on his Facebook or on X, if you're not watching the Inside Edge, as soon as you're having your morning breakfast and coffee, you're missing out on a plethora of encyclopedic knowledge from David Wildstein. A little bit more on that a little bit later, but folks, make sure you always check out the Inside Edge every morning. Of course, check out all the great content via NewJerseyGlobe.com. David, how's your summer been, brother?
It's the same as the spring and the winter and the summer of last year. It's like we have gone in a cycle that we haven't had a break since the fall of 2023. I've never seen anything like it. It has moved from one election to another. So, summer, I don't even know what the temperature is outside anymore. I don't know anything. It's the same as it was last year and the year before. But I love it. We all love it, right? I mean, this is what we live for.
Absolutely. And to your point about obviously like maybe seeing a break in the fall of 2023, I mean, I remember even during the League of Municipalities, people were already talking about primaries in 2024, even last year's league. So there's never a moment to rest in New Jersey politics, David. I mean, that's really, I think, what makes it fascinating. But obviously, there's a lot to be said about polling right now. 4 years ago, David, I was really the only journalist that called that race pretty close. I said that Jack Chiarelli had a really good chance to unseat Phil Murphy, and he came close. I said it's going to be single digits, maybe 2 or 3 points. And sure enough, I was right. So I'm still trying to collect a lot of steak dinners from people 4 years later. But I think this year, David, the polling still favors the Democrat. Obviously, as Democrats still have a registration advantage in New Jersey. Certainly, right now what we're seeing. But I got to tell you, I said it 4 years ago, I think Jack Chiarelli has a chance to win. I'm going to go on record now. I think Jack Chiarelli is going to win because the polling is close. And if it's close, it doesn't look good for Democrats, at least in my opinion, David.
Yeah, Paul, I've made no secret of this. I have never been more frustrated, more dubious with polling numbers than I have this cycle. You and I have talked about this recently that the primary polls, I think their modeling was off. I don't think they anticipated a 63% turnout among women. I don't think their models anticipated 800,000 Democrats turning out to vote. I think a lot went wrong. And, if I were running a campaign, and thank God I'm not running campaigns anymore, but I think you run it like you're 10 points behind, and regardless of what these polls are showing you.
You're absolutely right about that. And I think that, and again, irrespective of what we think of him now, obviously in his current state, but who always used to say that all the time? I'm always running as if I'm 10 points down. Bob Menendez used to tell that to me all the time when I would run into him at restaurants. He'd be like, Fernando, I'm never ahead. I'm always 10 points down. And I think that's a really healthy perspective to have when you are running, whether you're an incumbent, whether you're the challenger. And in this case, obviously, Phil Murphy is term limited. We're going to have a new governor. We'll see. And historically, I mean, listen, you do a great job on the Inside Edge talking about precedent and historical trends. Certainly, one party has not had a winner for 3 consecutive cycles. I think Democrats are trying to break that streak from the 1960s, I think.
1961. And only, by the way, Fernando, because the Republican nominee slipped in his hotel room in June of 61, broke his leg in 2 places, and was benched for the entire summer at a time when retail politics really mattered. Had Jim Mitchell not broken his leg, that election that was determined by 1 percentage point would have gone the other way. So, this is Jerseyans like some change. They like somebody new to come in and sort of course correct.
Folks, give it for David Wildstein here with, again, historical notes here that are so valuable during this program. I appreciate that. And David, listen, even sometimes, Phil Murphy bucked that trend where a Democrat had not won consecutive terms since Brendan Byrne. Obviously a contested race in 21, but I think there's an argument to be made that Mikey Sherrill is somewhat running to uphold Murphy policies. And we're seeing that a little bit in their platform. I think that's how Jack Chiarelli is trying to paint this campaign, whether it's about energy, whether it's about taxes, obviously spending, the budget, LGBTQ rights in New Jersey. I think that, Jack Chiarelli certainly is trying to buck that trend. But at the same time, listen, even historically, if there's a Democrat president, there's a good chance there's been a Republican governor in New Jersey and vice versa. Here in New Jersey, we have a Republican president. There's a good chance that Jack Chiarelli could buck that trend and he could win in November. David, I'm just hearing so much from different operatives from both parties that there is just lack of enthusiasm, especially among Democrats, that Mikey Sherrill is sort of giving off this 2009 John Corzine vibes where there isn't a lot of enthusiasm. Again, depends who you ask. But I'm hearing that from a lot of Democrats and even registered independents that I talk to that are saying, yeah, I usually don't vote Republican, but I might have to because of energy, my energy bills, certainly property taxes, the budget. Jack Sherman's got a really good chance to win here, despite what polling might tell us, David.
Yeah, they both have a good chance to win, which is why this race is close. And I think there were a lot of Democrats that underestimated Jack Ciattarelli 4 years ago, and I think it's very easy for Republicans to underestimate Mikey Sherrill. I don't underestimate her. She won that primary on her own terms by a fairly wide margin. You go back 7.5, 8 years when she first flipped that congressional seat. That was a solid Republican district, and she came out of nowhere. And by early 2018, she made Rodney Frelinghuysen, the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, one of the most powerful men in the Congress, and she scared him out of the race. So when you look at somebody with her skills and her experience, and don't think that Mikey Sherrill's not one tough out. She is, from a Democratic side, a really, really good candidate. This is, and I say this, and that I play these things down the middle, and the Globe isn't a partisan site one way or the other, but the best thing for a democracy, and I've said this on your show more than once, the best thing for a democracy is when both parties nominate a good person and a good candidate, and then they let the voters hear what their visions are for the future of the state and make an educated decision. Anybody who thinks that Sherrill's going to be easy to beat hasn't been watching Mikey Sherrill. And anybody who thinks that Jack Ciattarelli, despite an 800,000 Democratic vote advantage on registration, is going to lose because it's a Democratic state and Donald Trump's in the White House, they haven't been watching Jack Ciattarelli. I mean, this is a race with zero certainties. And if I shouldn't say if you could bet on it, you really can, right? I mean, now with I'm sure there's a website out there where you can actually lay down money on the New Jersey governor's race. I wouldn't bet a penny of my own money to predict how this race is going to go.
You're absolutely right. It's going to be a very razor thin margin come November. I think it's going to be a few points, really. I don't see anyone blowing the other opponent out in this race. But it's funny, obviously you mentioned the primary. We talked right before the primary on this program. And folks, if you're just joining us live right now, like, comment, share, and subscribe to tonight's episode of Real Talk as New Jersey Globe Editor-in-Chief David Wildstein joins us live right now here on Jersey First TV. We talked about it. I think we tried to make some predictions. I think we were pretty close. I know I picked Sherrill and Ciattarelli to win the primaries. I think you did as well. I think based on what, obviously, there was no county line anymore, but I think we saw a lot of consolidated support through all 21 counties for both Sherrill and Ciattarelli. I mean, obviously, Jack won all 21 counties, if I'm not mistaken. And Mikey Sherrill was really able to consolidate a lot of support from the big power brokers in New Jersey, up here in Hudson County, where I live, with State Senator Brian Stack, nearby with County Executive DiVincenzo in Essex County, certainly McCabe in Middlesex County. You had a lot of power brokers that really got behind Sherrill. And, the numbers showed that where it wasn't even like a close race for her to win. What was surprising is who came in behind her. Newark Mayor Ross Baraka really catapulted to second place, outpacing Jersey City Mayor Stephen Fulop. Obviously, we know about Spiller and Gottheimer and Steve Sweeney. But my goodness, I mean, looking back on primary day, though, David, I mean, I did not think Baraka, and I thought that a lot of what happened at Delaney Hall was very performative. I thought it was maybe just to sort of help with fundraising and just sort of maybe, round up that progressive base and get them all against, Donald Trump. but it really did help Barack really, I mean, I think exceed expectations in the Democrat Party in the primary, did it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he was a good candidate, and we saw this. For better or for worse, I'm going to take a tiny bit of credit on the Baraka thing because as you know, because you were there, the New Jersey Globe decided that voters shouldn't wait until the spring to hear from the candidates. We had a February gubernatorial debate. That's never happened before that early. And Baraka shined in that debate. And that debate allowed him to sort of launch his campaign. A week later, he went into Hunterdon County, which is probably as different as Newark as any other place in the state, and ran a very close second. So, he was a good candidate. And, again, you won't count him out, whether it's 4 years or 8 years. He's a young guy, and I think there's a lot to see from him. He was really strong. And by the way, something else, Fernando, and I hope it's okay to if I'm a little bit mean on your show. If you think I'm too mean,
Never.
I apologize for it.
Never.
We talked about polling and what's the barometer. I'll tell you I said I wouldn't bet on this race. The one barometer that I'm confident is that Alan Steinberg is always going to be wrong. And if Alan Steinberg says, I'm calling this race for somebody, then go bet all your money that it's going to go in a different way. And I have to say this to you. I don't know if you caught it on social media. Alan Steinberg goes on social media, almost teary in the way he's writing about how sad it is that he's heard that Sandy Koufax is near the end of his life. Uh-huh. And then a couple of days later, there's CC Sabathia tweeting out a photo of him. He had just spent the day with Sandy Koufax, who looked tan and healthy and great. And I don't know about you, Fernando, but if I have to choose between whom I'm going to believe on a health report on Sandy Koufax, CC Sabathia or Alan Steinberg, I'm going with Sabathia every time.
David, listen, you don't have to even try to egg me on. I mean, Is there anybody really reliable at Insider NJ? I sincerely doubt that. But you're right about Steinberg. I mean, he has to be blocked on socials. But yeah, Alan, listen, it's interesting. One day Mikey Sherrill's an anti-Semite, according to him, or he doesn't.
Which is, by the way, not true. Whether you like Mikey Sherrill or you don't like Mikey Sherrill, she's not an anti-Semite by any means. She's had a really good record in support of every religious or ethnic group. That's not a fair criticism of her.
Well, I'll say this much. If you ever need a cure for insomnia, listen to his podcast. My God, I'll put you to sleep. But getting back to the race, though, I mean, certainly the primary was very, very heated, obviously also on the Republican side. And what I found a little alarming, though, David, especially for Jack right now, as he's really rallying a lot of different demographics right now. And listen, they're both working hard. Mikey Sherrill was at MetLife Stadium yesterday for WWE SummerSlam. And, obviously her and her husband were rocking different T-shirts. Root for different guys in the main event. Cool, great. You're trying to, put up this perception about being a regular person, which I think you need to do. I think you need to resonate with people, right? Especially those that maybe aren't convinced by you. Same thing with Jack Charvelli. He's going to all these county fairs. He's going up and down the state. They're both working. What I found interesting, though, about Jack, though, is that, especially around Republican circles, it seems like even the most devoted Bill Spadea supporters, and I saw that at the last debate that you guys hosted in Essex County, where a lot of the Bill Spadea faithful came out very loud, even in some cases, sometimes obnoxious during, in the auditorium. But I can tell you that whatever that chatter was, that has disappeared. We have not heard from Bill Spadea since the loss on June 10th. And I think a lot of Spadea supporters have also just been like, listen, we get it. There are Democrats and voters who are vote blue no matter who. We might as well be red until we're dead. I think that's also part of the tribalism that exists now, especially coming up for November, David.
Yeah. I mean, historically, you've had some bumpy primaries along the way, but at the end of the day, maybe there's some people that are on the inside. They're inside the bubble. They're less forgiving. But if you're a registered Republican in New Jersey, you're going to want Jack Ciattarelli to be the governor, and because you're talking about a blue, really a blue state numbers wise, and I think he's healing it, and Mikey Sherrill is healing the Democrats. It's not that Ciattarelli's not going to get the Republicans and Sherrill's not going to get the Democrats. It's a function of who can make the turnout model best for them. The way that Republicans compete with the Democratic registration advantage is to see Democratic turnout depressed and less enthusiastic, and Republicans coming out to vote for their candidates. So we'll I want to see, for example, these are the kind of things you sort of are going to watch for. What's President Trump's role going to be in this campaign? Is he going to come to New Jersey for a big rally and cause Republicans to vote at a higher rate than Democrats? And then here's the rub, which is this. You also have a risk there, which is, Trump can pump up Republican turnout, but he could also cause Democrats to become more interested. So the key there is sort of the balance. What happened to Ciattarelli 4 years ago is he tapped into sort of a lack of enthusiasm among Democrats for Joe Biden, and in anger that was sort of hidden away toward Phil Murphy. And he had this perfect storm, and he came within 3 points. And I'll tell you this, I've been a little critical, as have others, of the Republican Governors Association, which is sort of the last standing group of Republicans that still like Chris Christie. If I'm sure you remember him, from a time many years ago when he was slightly relevant. Not anymore, but the RGA skipped the governor's race 4 years ago. They didn't do anything. So far, they haven't lifted a finger for Jack Ciattarelli. The DGA, the Democratic governors, are all in for Mikey Sherrill, and so that's a lot of money. They reserved $20 million in TV ad time. It doesn't mean they're going to spend it all, but they've reserved those rates. Republicans, nothing. And it's incredible that they might throw away this opportunity to put a Republican governor in a Democratic state going into 2026, just because they just aren't interested. Ciattarelli was out west a couple of weeks ago, pitching for money. In the old days, when I say the old days, I mean like 2012, 2013, 2009, where you needed the RGA and the DGA to move money through back into the state. Ciattarelli doesn't need to raise money for them so they could give it back to him. He can do that himself through his own super PACs now. He needs them to step up with money. And if they're not, and this is another close race and they lose, that's going to be on them again.
Well said there. And it is alarming that the RGA isn't showing more interest in this race, because it's a winnable one for Republicans, just like in Virginia, obviously the only two gubernatorial races in 2025. And what's alarming too, though, is I think, listen, you said it perfectly about the variable that is President Donald Trump. Obviously, if the economy continues at the rate it's going, David, inflation continues to go down. Fuel right now is, gas is under $3 in New Jersey for the first time in more than 4 years. I mean, obviously, during the summer, that's almost unheard of. We're seeing food prices go down. We're seeing interest rates going down. And I've said this to operatives that look at me like I'm insane, but if you're advising Mikey Sherrill, if you're that brain trust, I mean, just saying, well, I don't like Trump, that's not going to be enough, because last November we saw, now, yes, the president's not on the ballot this November, but last year, I mean, there was an energy about Donald Trump. I was there in Wildwood on the beach in May, obviously when he came to New Jersey. Whether or not he does that for Jack Ciattarelli right now, or maybe during the fall, maybe during the football season, goes to MetLife or goes to Prudential Center. Obviously, he was there this summer, a raucous roar for him when he was appearing at the UFC fight. it seems like, Chiarelli would benefit from him. The president's still polling pretty well. And again, back to polling, have to be a little leery about it. But
Yeah.
again, I think there's an optic about Donald Trump in New Jersey that he came across as more likable than the Democrat last year, Kamala Harris. And I think that, listen, if the economy's still going well and we're fighting back against all the woke bullshit, David, it's still sort of permeating in New Jersey, Chiarelli can maybe capitalize on that. Maybe not necessarily with the president coming to town. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. But I think that hating Donald Trump and hating what's going on in Washington isn't enough for Mikey Sherrill and for Democrats, because right now, the reason property taxes are the highest they've ever been, David, it's not because of Donald Trump. It's not because of J.D. Vance. The reason the budget is ballooning up bigger than Chris Christie, that's not Donald Trump's fault in Trenton. It's Democrats that have had control of the legislature for over 20 years, David.
Yeah, you're one of the points that I saw recently, and I have this lack of confidence lately in polls that I indicated, but there's some exceptions. One of them is Dan Cassino at Fairleigh Dickinson University. I think of the independent pollsters, hands down right now, Dan Cassino is the best in New Jersey. He had an interesting subset of his data last week in a poll that showed Sherrill ahead by 8 points, and that is that when you talk about state issues, energy costs, property taxes, Chiarelli's numbers go up by, I think it was 7 points among independents. But when you shift that conversation to national issues, he drops by 4 points among independents. So the challenge for Chiarelli to win is he's got to have voters voting on New Jersey issues. And the challenge for Sherrill is she's got to have voters thinking about federal issues. And I know that I geek out when I say this, but we're talking about a modern, fairly modern constitution for New Jersey, 1947. As constitutions go, Jersey's relatively new. They had an entire debate over when should New Jersey elect its governor. Should we do it in a federal election year, a presidential year, the president's off year? Should we do it the year after a presidential election in an odd year, or 3 years later in an odd year? And they settled on this. And the reason they did it is because they wanted state elections for governor, for state senate, for the state legislature to be fought and won over state issues without the coattails of Washington, D.C. And that was the intent of the modern day New Jersey founding fathers. That's the intent of the Constitution. The challenge now, with the decline in local media, overbalanced by a national media that talks about Trump over and over and over all day long, all night long, is whether Chiarelli can focus voters on the issues that they're intended to be talking about, which are state issues.
And speaking about discussing the issues, obviously that will lead us into the fall for debate season, David. And certainly for our audience, I know no one's better than you to sort of break this down for my audience to understand sort of like the process that goes into it. Obviously, ELEC accepts proposals from different news organizations. To no surprise, the New Jersey Globe, along with Rider University, was given one of the debates coming up in the fall. I believe the other one was, Fox 5, and I'm not sure what the
Channel 7, ABC local network. Yeah.
So, and it sort of begs the question, number one, what's that process like in terms of formulating a proposal to ELEC, sort of, putting your best foot forward? It's almost like, it's almost like a class presentation. You're up there and you have to really, like, on PowerPoint almost, explain why you're a better option than other news outlets. And again, listen, you'll take the high road here, but I won't. And it's not a surprise that the New Jersey Globe got one of the debates and also one of the local news outlets. But to see an outlet like NJPBS and NJ Spotlight News not get one, it's a reminder, David, and this is what my audience tells me consistently. It's why so many people in New Jersey, regardless of party affiliation, have lost faith in the establishment media, whether it's the Ledger, whether it's the Bergen Record, whether it's the Asbury Park Press. I think NJPBS and NJ Spotlight News is part of that conundrum where they're not putting their best foot forward. They're certainly showing incredible bias at times. And I think that residents are turning off and turning away from those outlets, which is, again, not to sort of brag about myself too much, but the reason this podcast does well, David, is because people say, hey, Fernando's more trustworthy and much more independent media than David Cruz or anybody on NJPBS. So I'm not surprised you got a debate along with the local outlets.
Yeah, I mean, just so everybody knows, this is a competitive process, and since 1977, New Jersey has had public financing of gubernatorial elections. They match $2 for every dollar raised. So in a general election, candidates can get up to, I think it's about $12 million, but in exchange, they are required to participate in 2 debates sanctioned by the commission. This year was incredibly competitive. CNN, MSNBC wanted to do nationally televised debates. NBC, network affiliates, New York and Philly came in. The Ledger, the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Gannett newspapers, the different collection of their newspapers in the state, News 12, New Jersey PBS. We were incredibly fortunate to get that, and we get to work with Rider University, but we also get to work with On New Jersey, which is a 2.5-year-old streaming news channel, and I really commend the commissioners on ELEC for recognizing where people get their news from in 2025, that it's not putting something on from 7 to 8 once on a network and hope people see it. As Micah Rasmussen says, this isn't Kennedy Nixon 1960 where the entire nation comes to a pause so that they can watch this debate. This is trying to get people, through new media. And when you're talking about YouTube and Twitter and Facebook Live and our own platforms, and we're blessed to work with C-SPAN, and we have a really talented person in Laura Jones. These streaming platforms like you and I are on actually have the ability to gather a greater audience than a one and done shot by the networks. And we are, we're going, further than anybody's ever gone before. We are through our streaming partners, we're able to close caption now in 14 different languages in order to reach voters. On New Jersey and the Globe, we air these debates 16 times between debate night and election day, all sorts of different hours, and making it accessible. And we leave it up on our homepage, and we put our money, in order to make voters more informed, through an advertising campaign to get people to watch it. And, one of the things, Fernando, I'm just incredibly proud of and grateful for is between the Globe debates, Democrat and Republican in February, and then Democrat and Republican in May, which was, a 2.5-hour substantive discussion on issues that you can't get when you have 60 minutes of sound bites. Yeah. C-SPAN, which is an incredibly strong platform, unbiased, and they air public policy programming, without adding their opinions one way or the other. The New Jersey Globe on Jersey Rider University debates got 28 hours of airtime during the primaries. That's incredible. And it's the way the media is working now. People come to, they come to Real Talk with Fernando Uribe. They come to the New Jersey Globe. They watch On New Jersey. We are, by the way, all of us, and this is just so incredibly important, we are free to the viewing public.
Yeah.
We don't require a paid subscription.
Yes,
we don't have our hands out looking for money. We don't require you to have cable television. We give our news for free in order for a goal of a better informed electorate, which is the linchpin of democracy. And we're doing it right. And you don't want to go to one of these old legacy newspapers that they're going to tell you what happened at the debate, but only if you give them $20 a month.
Yeah.
That's not working anymore. That's old media. There is a reason why they're failing. And, an old friend of mine once said that if you have to be told that your hair's on fire, it is too late to put it out. And
you're absolutely right, David. You're absolutely right. And again, I think that's why independent media is thriving right now, where, again, to your point, there's no paywall here. There's no subscriptions. It's free of charge. People tune in and the traffic speaks for itself. And I think that's where New Jersey residents, I think Americans as a whole, I think that's why they're relying on independent media. The established media, the legacy media, really has been dying out a very slow death. Listen, here in New Jersey, and trust me, no one's mourning on this channel for Tom Moran and the Ledger, but I know that the Ledger served a purpose for so many years.
They were a great paper, Fernando, a great paper.
Absolutely.
And I delivered it. I used to walk around as 13 years old with newspapers on my shoulder, delivering the Star Ledger house to house. I think I was making about 2 cents a paper a day doing that. They were a great paper, which is what makes their passing so unfortunate.
Yeah, listen, here in Hudson County, the Jersey Journal was one of those institutions for over 100 years where people relied on the printing of the Jersey Journal. But I would argue, very much like the Ledger, it started getting so biased, David, it started turning people off. So when I see, Tom Moran probably flipping fries at McDonald's somewhere, I'm not crying. Or also Ron Dellinger here in Hudson County. I hate that the papers died out because they provide an incredible service. I don't disagree with you. But I think the reason that podcasts and independent media is thriving, and this is what kind of bothers me too, though, David, because, establishment and legacy media people in New Jersey look at podcasts like this and others and say, well, that's not real journalism. No, it is. It evolves like everything else, David. And I think that the reason why independent media continues to thrive in very different sectors is because we're giving the public, the voters, taxpayers, a new outlet of information that in many instances isn't as biased as what legacy has been giving us for so long, David. Am I wrong here?
No. I mean, first of all, I mean, you go look at, and I keep a couple books right on my desk. One of them is the Constitution. I've got the Federalist Papers and even the Godfather. All of these are great political lessons. But you go look at the First Amendment, and nowhere in there and I've looked for it. I've looked hard for it. Is that section where Tom Moran gets to decide who's a journalist and who's not. And voters are smarter than people want to give them credit for. And they know when there's bullshit out there. They know, when they hear things, what to hear and, and what to believe and what not to believe. And, and sometimes people struggle a little bit, but everything sort of finds its niche and, water raises to the appropriate level. But you can't get away from the fact that things have changed. I'm getting older. I remember when fax machines revolutionized the world. And now, unless you're a Superior Court judge, nobody uses a fax machine anymore. It used to be that they would post public notices in a town square, and you would come in with your horse-drawn wagon to the general store to get supplies, go to the post office, and you would go up to this bulletin board and you would see the notices posted. And that old way of doing things, the town crier from the medieval ages. Guess what? And I'm going to put this in your head now. And now you're gonna use it. But you, Fernando Uribe, are the town crier of 2025. You are filling a void that has been around for centuries in terms of communicating with people. It's just that you're not standing on a street corner, in a costume, reading a proclamation from the king. You are now on your social media channels, on the Jersey First Network, and you are the modern day town crier, and you are informing the public. And next time I come on this, I'm going to say Fernando Uribe, PhD, town crier. You're going to have to change that.
Well, David, you're being very kind. I appreciate the kind.
By the way, you're not the only one. You're not the only one. Now what you have across America are thousands of town criers, people that now have a platform to voice, to bring about, change and talk about issues that concern them. That is your right under the First Amendment. You're permitted. You, Fernando Uribe, and millions of others are permitted to voice your opinion, and you're no longer constrained by the fact that you don't own a TV station, and you don't own a printing press, and you don't have a radio station. Now you are empowered to be the modern day town crier, giving information out to people. And that, and those who have not changed with the times, are the ones that are finding themselves on the outside looking in.
Well, David, I'm sure a lot of heads are exploding tonight after hearing you say that tonight. So I appreciate the kind words. And
by the way, there's a lot of town criers on the left that are doing a great job.
Sure,
and there's a lot of town criers in the middle, but that's what we are right now. And we don't get paid, you don't have to pay for it, just like 200 years ago, almost 250 years ago in Philadelphia, when the Continental Congress would make it, would take an act, and the town crier would stand out in the square in Philadelphia outside Independence Hall and read the proclamation. That was available to everybody, not just those who can afford to buy, their publication or subscribe to their platform. Basically, what this is doing is bringing us all back to our fundamentals, to our roots of democracy being available to everybody.
Well said, David. Obviously, and the Globe does a great job about bringing that information out there. Now, obviously, not just with the governor's race. I want to pick your brain about some assembly races. Obviously, all 80 state assembly seats are up for grabs. Democrats have a very big stranglehold right now of a margin of 52-28 in the state assembly. Republicans have a chance. Maybe not up here in Hudson County where it's as blue as Windex up here, but I think there's a lot of vulnerable Dems in Central and South Jersey that perhaps, listen, if Ciarelli catches fire, maybe they can ride his coattails on November the 5th. But right now, I would argue, talking to people throughout the state, Republicans have a chance to maybe win 7, 8, maybe as many as 9 seats coming up in November to sort of, cut into that lead the Democrats have in the assembly. What Democrats do you think are the most vulnerable right now?
Well, I think, I'm going to fall in the same trap that everybody always are. I always start in the South and I work my way up.
Sure.
District 3 is competitive. 1 seat in District 8, because that's a split district. I think District 11 is potentially competitive. You could see something going on in 16, probably less so than in some other places. You're looking at District 30. You're looking at maybe 38. The math there for a Republican majority in the assembly just isn't there. And that's even after a good map. a map that was fair. This is the assembly. It's not gerrymandered, but there are some opportunities there to bring those numbers into the mid to high 30s, and then it's potentially getting others that are maybe a little bit more modern in nature to sort of swing together a coalition. That's their opportunity. But one of the things you're looking at from the Democratic side is they've got some really good incumbents. I'm not betting against Heather Simmons in the third. Andrea Katz has been working hard. Lou Ann Peter Paul. By the way, she may be representing Monmouth County in the legislature, but she is from Livingston, and you never ever count out somebody from Livingston. And Margie Donlin. They have not stopped campaigning. Since they were elected and beat incumbents 2 years ago. Avi Schnall, the same thing in the Lakewood-based districts. So none of these races are easy. There's not a single seat in the state that I will tell you is absolutely going to shift Republican. But there are a lot that they're in play. And then, there's some Republican incumbents that are potentially vulnerable too, depending upon where this election winds up. And, I think there's going to have to be a discussion down the road about how these maps work. There are, I'm going to throw a new thing into the mix, at least on this show. I've talked about it before, which is that New Jersey has this sort of old model of dual member assembly districts. It's not the best model. There's a lot of toxicity between running mates. They more likely dislike each other than not. And it used to be that they chose 80 assembly seats in the 60s, and now as populations have grown, New Jersey assembly districts are the largest lower house districts in the country besides California. These are getting to be 230,000 people. One of the reasons it's so expensive to run for the state assembly is because of the size of these districts. At some point, maybe there'll be a discussion, an earnest discussion between the two parties of whether that should be divided in half and whether there should be 80 single member assembly districts in order to drive the cost of these races down. And it's hard to represent 230,000 people when you've got, a career and you're not a full-time legislator. And, there might be a more manageable number, and that might allow for the creation of districts that might be competitive. And one of the things we saw in the primary, and cut me off if I'm rambling too much.
No.
But one of the things we saw in the primary among the Democrats is a quarter of the districts without the line had competitive races. And that's only going to become more so now that people realize that it can be. It's going to put a lot of pressure on incumbents to actually do the work, get out there, build their own name recognition, build their own brands, raise their own money, especially as you start getting into the Senate in 2 years. So what happens in the legislature this year is hugely important. Mikey Sherrill, is if she's there, she's going to be there likely with the Democratic legislature. If Chitterelli's there, it's going to be with a Democratic legislature, but probably one that he can work with.
David, you mentioned obviously representation, the way it works out with seats, and I think you're the best person to ask about this. It's been in the news cycle, obviously on a national level. We see what's going on with Texas. There's been discussions about what's going on in California. What are you hearing about redistricting in New Jersey, where Democrats on a national level are concerned about what's going on in Texas, where as many as 5 new congressional seats that favor Republicans could surface? What are you hearing about what's going on in New Jersey and whether or not that could happen here? Right now with the congressional makeup of New Jersey? Yeah,
there's nothing going on in New Jersey. And the only way to do that in time for the 26th election would be to pass it in this month and put it on a ballot for a constitutional amendment in the fall of 2025. There's nobody talking about that happening. No legislators have been told to adjust their summer vacation schedules. This deadline is going to come and go without it happening. There has not been a real push. I think you're seeing a couple states talking about it, and I think I think what you saw was Hakeem Jeffries on a Sunday morning television show, just sort of naming some blue states, and he threw New Jersey in. That's not happening. And by the way, if it does, there's always a risk. This is you're talking about a commission that picks it. It's a bipartisan commission. The risk is right now they've got a map that's 9 Democrats and 3 Republicans. What if they drew a map that wound up strengthening Tom Kean and weakening Nellie Poe or somebody else, and all of a sudden they're talking about defending, possibly coming from 9 to 8 as a result of their efforts. And I cannot allow the town crier of Union City to not hear me say this one, which is if you remember the last time the tiebreaker, former Justice Wallace said that he was siding with the Democrats because the Republicans won the last map. Well, now Wallace is still the tiebreaker. You risk him coming back and saying, well, I'm sticking with my guns. Last time the Democrats got the map, now I'm siding with the Republicans.
Interesting twist there. David, the Globe does a better job than anybody, obviously not just with the gubernatorial race, the assembly races, but even local races. I know you've taken a really good insight into what's going on in a lot of interesting municipal races. Other than, listen, up here in Hudson County, we have the big Jersey City mayoral race, the council races, same thing in Hoboken. Other municipal races that sort of getting your attention over at the Globe?
Yeah, I'm looking at some Democratic mayors in red towns like Brick, which is just solid red, but a strong Democratic organization has been able to control local elections there. I'm looking at Westfield, a pretty solid Democratic town, but with a highly informed electorate where they talk about local issues. And when you're talking about issues of overdevelopment, it's amazing, Fernando, how you have a town that is that votes Democratic, except when there's talk about maybe disrupting the downtown area and adding more housing and maybe going a little bit taller. And the minute you start talking about changing, the aesthetic fabric of the community, all these people start running out and saying, you know what, we need a different party in control. So, I want to see where those two go, just as an example. And of course, better than me on Jersey City, and Hoboken. Hoboken, for its population has an outsized balance on the power in the state. Jersey City, I like everybody else was sort of, bewildered by Steve Fulop's statement last week that he thinks that Jim McGreevy's on his way to get there. That may be true. And McGreevy, I've been watching Jim McGreevy for 30 something years, and I will tell you, and this is not taking sides at all, but he was a great campaigner in the 90s and 2000s, and he has only gotten better as a campaigner with age. And I see how hard he's working. I see the popularity of James Solomon, and he's really connected with a group of voters that are hugely interested in the future of his city. There's some other I think Ali, the former school board member, is connecting with voters. I don't know about Bill O'Day. Joyce Waterman hasn't raised a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I will. We're at April 4th. So can I make a prediction out of to you as a Hudson County guy
Sure.
and I hope I'm not. I hope we don't come back here in December and you say, "Hey, Wildstein, you're just no better than Alan Steinberg. You got to."
I'd never say that. Oh my goodness. Oh goodness gracious. No, never.
But we are dealing with, for Jersey City, for Hoboken, also for Hillside, we're dealing with a potential crisis in elections because they have a runoff scheduled for the first week in December. And now they don't certify these elections for, until just before Thanksgiving. There is no chance at all that if there's a need for a runoff, and look, you know Hudson better than I do, going to be true or false, there's going to be a runoff in Jersey City. And there's going to be a runoff in Hoboken. And if the difference in votes between the second place and the third place finisher is not absolutely certain, you've got to mail out vote by mail ballots before you know who the candidates are. You've got to have a drawing before you know who the candidates are. You've got to conduct a campaign before a winner has been determined in a final count. This is going to be an absolute mess. I can tell you, Assemblywoman Barbara McCann-Stamato has identified this. She identified it months ago. She's put a bill into the legislature to fix that, to move these runoffs according to the new election schedule, to simply move the reorganization of these cities, and people aren't hearing it because that's what happens in New Jersey. Until it's an emergency, until there's a catastrophe, people just they don't want to get involved and they don't want to fix the problem. I think you're going to see a huge issue this year in Jersey City and Hoboken, where you have to put people on a ballot before you know who won the election. And what could go wrong with that, right?
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And thankfully, in the next cycle in 29, those municipal races go back to May in Hoboken and Jersey City. So I'm thankful for that. I think also, especially in a year like this year, the county clerk, between the governor's race, assembly races, it might look like a scroll out of like the Lord of the Rings, David.
Yeah, I don't, and personally, and and the only time I'll actually weigh in with a personal view is on these process issues. I sort of like these November nonpartisan elections because when you get to May, you're talking about low voter turnout, and
That's fair.
And the question I always ask is, if you win a May election, 51-49 with a 10% voter turnout. That means that more than 9 out of 10 voters didn't vote for you, yet you're getting elected. I'm not so sure that that's democracy when an itsy bitsy fraction of the voters do this. But they need to adjust the schedule on the runoffs. And, you don't swear in the governor until the third Tuesday of the month. The president doesn't get sworn in until the third Tuesday. This insistence on reorganizations being on January 1st, it might be like the fax machine and the leaked public notices and the weight of the Star Ledger. It's, what's the big deal? So you move a reorg ahead a few weeks. You give them, you give elections time to be run honestly and fairly, and you reorganize at the end of the end of January, and then that term goes 4 years to the end of January later. You just sort of get it fixed and make a course correction. But it's not good for the voters to make an informed decision if there's an uncertainty as who the candidates are, and clerks, municipal clerks, county clerks have their hands tied and they don't know what to do because these election laws conflict with each other.
Well said, David. Real quick, just a couple more things. I'll let you go. I know you got a busy night ahead of you. As a journalist, obviously, fellow journalist Terrence McDonald, the editor of the New Jersey Monitor, who, by the way, I like reading this stuff every so often when it's out there. He's raised some concerns about transparency in New Jersey, and obviously other activists, other press activists in New Jersey have raised a lot of concerns about what's been going on in Trenton during the Murphy administration. Certainly legislators that have maybe enabled this demise of transparency, whether it's about Oprah or anything else. Where do you see this going, and what path do you see in the sense of sort of like a collision course between Trenton and the press in New Jersey that just want to get some transparency out there? I know McDonald's been leading the charge on this and others. Where do you see this?
Yeah, the problem, and it's not Terrence's fault at all. He's one of the good guys.
Yeah.
But you're sort of looking at, this is what happens when the press is less relevant. Is the legislators are allowed to move on legislation without really worrying whether the press is unhappy or not. Blame Tom Moran for that. Blame Mike Kelly for that. If the press wanted to be listened to, they would have seen what was on their plates 20 years ago with the changes in the way the media was, and maybe adjusted themselves. There's a lot of crybabies out there in the media. I hope I don't become one of them. If I do, I hope you promise to tell me that and take me, and I want you in Hudson County style to discipline me.
I sincerely doubt you'll ever go down that path. Last thing here, what was the epiphany or the genesis of the Inside Edge? It's something I look forward to. I know thousands in New Jersey also look forward to it every morning. I'm having my morning coffee and breakfast. I'm scrolling through the newsfeed, but I genuinely enjoy listening to you with the Inside Edge and all the encyclopedic knowledge that you bring to that segment. What was the epiphany about starting that?
I wish I could tell you that this was some big idea that I've been working on for months that I unveiled, but it was literally over the Christmas holidays, and I thought I don't want to get stale either. Right. The Globes now, was 7 years old in January, and you want to do new things. You want to, constantly evolve with the way people are getting the news. And I thought, well, what if I came up with something in the mornings, no more than 4 minutes that people could either watch or listen to, get a little bit of information, maybe a little bit of an explainer, maybe a little bit of a history. And I figured, I'd try it. It didn't cost me anything. I didn't have to build a set or get a producer or anything like that. I figured I'd try it. And if it didn't work, if I didn't get an audience, it'd be fine. But the feedback that I've gotten, knock wood, I'm humbled by it. But the number of people, I remember I took a day off at one point, a couple weeks after the primary, and I got a and I don't get these very often, a nasty text message from Brian Stack saying, "Where's the Inside Edge? I look forward to it every morning." And Stack, like you, like me, we're old school, we're old souls, and we realize that, when I do the history parts of it, history is doomed to repeat itself, and the more informed people are, it's to me, that morning thing is fun. It's not a lot of reporting. I get up, you see, I wear a sweatshirt so that I could literally just get up early, throw a sweatshirt on. I don't have to have the perfectly tailored black jacket with the muscles bulging from my red T-shirt.
The sweet talker, David Lawson.
I just throw on a sweatshirt and I look at the camera and I just talk and I keep a couple notes, and it's fun, and I'm just it's humbling that people like it, and I thank you for saying something nice about it.
No, I appreciate it. I love looking forward to it, David. Listen, I really appreciate your time. And as we're closing out here, I normally don't do this, but I have such an incredible amount of respect for you. So I'm just going to sort of bluntly put it out there. I appreciate your support of this program, what you think about my brand of media and journalism. What can I do better moving forward here on Real Talk, and certainly what's coming up with the New Jersey Globe that we can expect coming up? So I'll give you the last word with those two things.
Well, it's hard, to say here's what you could do better, because your numbers are climbing all the time, and I would just I would just, I would give you, the same advice I give everybody, which is that media is constantly changing. And you have to, oh God, I wish I could remember. There was that great line from Ferris Bueller about, if you blink, you might miss something. I wish I could recall the line perfectly, but this is changing. And if you get stale, then somebody else is going to come in and do it better. And that to me, I mean, I've been doing this. And, I started very young, but this is my 52nd year in New Jersey politics, and it's no secret I had a couple of years off, where I was writing bad plays and not talking to people about politics and keeping my head down. But it's good when you have a chance. It's healthy when you have a chance when you're in your 50s to take a little bit of a sabbatical and see what retirement is like. And for me, I love working, and I love what I'm doing, and it's sort of my ambition. I want to die at my desk working on New Jersey politics. I hope it's not tomorrow. I hope it's not anytime soon, but I want to go as long as I can still do this job. And I have a lot of friends out there that have promised me that they won't let me embarrass myself, and they won't, if I get to a point where I can't do the job anymore, somebody's going to come in and do an intervention for me. But you love this too, Fernando. It is obvious. You have a passion for it. Not everybody agrees with you. And I'm going to break some news here. You're not always right. Sometimes
that is correct. Yeah, you
have strong opinions. You're not always right. I'm certainly wrong a whole lot of the time. But you can't teach passion for this business. You can't teach somebody to love politics, to have faith in the system, even when things aren't going well. And that's what we need. Whether it's me or it's you or it's your counterpart on the left, it's just, you need people that really love what they're doing, that just believe in their heart that an informed electorate is sort of the one of the core principles of a democracy.
David, I appreciate the kind words, and certainly I always look to you for guidance. And again, I really appreciate the faith you've given me, and really in coming on this show regularly and having these conversations. Sorry to keep you on as long as I did. I know you got a long night ahead of you.
Always a pleasure. And if I could just say one last thing,
please.
This is something your fans and your viewers should know. One of the things that's done differently is that at a New Jersey Globe debate, press access involves more than just the old media, and so here they are, candidates for governor, Democratic candidates for governor on stage, and Fernando Uribe's got a microphone in their face asking questions, and that's how it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be lock people out because you don't agree with them. And I'm really proud of how the Globe, and I thank you for your participation in this, but who would have expected that a couple of years ago? Fernando Uribe standing on a stage in a gubernatorial debate asking questions, fair questions, of a Democratic candidate for governor. That's, you talk about what are the changes. It's that because there are so many town criers out there, they need to have access to those that want to be in a position of power.
David, I appreciate the kind words. And again, it's just the evolution of media. Like you said, it's constantly changing. You adapt with the times, as do I. You're setting a great example for journalism in New Jersey. Folks, again, visit NewJerseyGlobe.com. Obviously, great content, not just from the editor, but obviously all the great staff, Joey Fox and everyone else. David, again, enjoy the rest of August. I'll have you on during the fall because I'm sure as election season heats up and people start paying attention after Labor Day, there'll be a lot to discuss. So once again, folks, he is David Wildstein, the editor-in-chief of the New Jersey Globe. Check him out on the Inside Edge every morning. David, enjoy the rest of August. Stay cool down there in Florida because it's muggy and humid sometimes. But, brother, stay healthy, stay awesome, and thank you for your faith in Real Talk. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Fernando.
Take care. Folks, good stuff there with David Wildstein, the editor of the New Jersey Globe. And certainly, again, if you haven't done so already, make sure you follow him on X. And, of course, also check him out on Facebook every morning. You can see the Inside Edge on his Facebook page and also on the New Jersey Globe, as well also on X. And, again, for the best content about what's going on in New Jersey politics and media and coverage, folks, there's the New Jersey Globe, and then there's everybody else. It's as simple as that. So for statewide media, listen, if you're not reading the Globe, what are you waiting for? Don't waste your time with these little Mickey Mouse, news sites like Insider NJ, NJ Spotlight News, NorthJersey.com, the Asbury Park Press. Folks, the reason that independent media is thriving, the reason that we have sites like Real Talk with Fernando Uribe, independent media sites like the Hudson County View, the Jersey Times, the Observer, okay, New Brunswick Today, the Edison Reporter. The reason, folks, that we're getting metrics and we're getting traffic is because you, our audience, New Jersey taxpayers, New Jersey voters, trust us. It's as simple as that. And they're just not trusting the establishment and legacy media. And here's a newsflash. For them, you've done it to yourselves. You've got lazy, and quite honestly, you've been misleading. And that's why people don't rely on you anymore. Now, is there an abundance of lazy journalism out there? Oh, my goodness. I mean, take your pick, folks. Max Pizarro, David Cruz, Alan Steinberg, Bob Hennelly, Jay Lassiter, my God, John Van Vliet. Just awful, Charles Stein. I mean, awful, lazy journalists. There's a reason why their news sites are dwindling and their metrics are evaporating and disappearing quicker than a virgin on prom night. But you know whose traffic doesn't disappear? That's right, folks. It's Real Talk here on Jersey First TV. Once again, thank you to David Wildstein, the editor-in-chief of the New Jersey Globe, for an insightful conversation here on Real Talk. Folks, it's 10 minutes past 8 here on the East Coast. We appreciate you tuning in here. Certainly a lot to break down in New Jersey politics. And again, nobody does it better than David Wildstein. And I appreciate the kind words there from David. And when you're able to be on his radar and stay on his radar, you must be doing something right. So I'm really, really grateful for the rapport I have with David Wildstein. Folks, don't go anywhere. You know what time it is. That's right. It's time for Final Thoughts. And folks, I don't want to spend too much time on this because I actually want to do some analysis during Final Thoughts, right? But what have we been learning in the weeks since June the 10th here in Hudson County? Yes, folks, we have seen propagandists. Yes, propagandists, because he's not a journalist. Leonard Filipowski continues to embarrass himself on social media, whether it's taking credit for retirements that had nothing to do with him, whether it's a Connecticut State Trooper, or Esther Suarez, the former Hudson County prosecutor. No, folks, when people file for retirement, they're not thinking about Leonard Filipowski. But certainly since June the 10th, we saw Leonard kind of disappear off the radar. So kind of got us thinking like, well, maybe Tony Hector isn't giving him a free apartment in Hudson County anymore. Maybe Tony Hector isn't, paying his rent or giving him disposable money like he was used to having, traveling back and forth from Connecticut, traveling up and down New Jersey, harassing council members, whether it's in Edison, whether it's in Morris County, or here in Hudson County. Harassing great public servants like Union City Mayor and State Senator Brian Stack. Or mayoral candidates like Jim McGreevey in Jersey City. So I can't confirm whether or not a GoFundMe is being established for Leonard Filipowski, folks, but I'm pretty sure it's coming soon. And for perhaps the least masculine journalist in New Jersey, and trust me, there's competition out there, folks. Whether it's Jay Lassiter, Max Pizarro, right, Michael Shurin, and others, Bob Hennelly, Alan Steinberg, John Van Vliet. I would argue that the guy that probably epitomizes the erosion of masculinity is this clown right here. Can someone tell me who thought it was a good idea for Leonard Filipowski to take a photo on a motorcycle? Wearing white athletic socks with brown dress shoes, dress pants, and a tank top that reminds us all, folks, Total Fitness and other gyms are 24 hours. If you're going to rock a tank top, Leonard, do us all a favor. Can you work on your traps? You know, your biceps, triceps, your forearms, please. If you're trying to impress somebody, sure. I mean, you might impress the Lollipop Guild in Hudson County, who puts you on a pedestal, like, all the local illiterates, like, Ernie Rivera-Batiz and Jose Garrido, who's never heard of spell check or ChatGPT. I mean, can someone just let them know that Grammarly is an app you can download for free? Right. By the way, Jose, nice job there by your wife, going on my stories there, viewing my stories. I mean, I get it. I mean, I'd be looking at, at handsome guys' stories too if I'm laying down next to you every night. But, again, shout out to your wife there for checking out my Facebook stories. But whether it's him or Joe Blaitler and others in Hudson County activism or politics, like sycophants who put Leonard Filipowski on a pedestal. Like John Bender. Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. He won't be doing that anymore. Or others. Somehow, Leonard Filipowski wants you to believe that he's doing some sort of service to journalism, and he's not. What he continues to be is an agitator. What he continues to be is a propagandist. Because pretty much like the coding of his commentary on social media is, please hire me. Please pay my rent. Please give me an allowance, because Tony Hector no longer is doing that. So, folks, when you look at social media and you see Leonard Filipowski in his latest rants, don't take him seriously. No one takes him seriously. And for a guy that talks really tough, the minute you get in his face, well, he gets about as feminine as Jay Lassiter. Or Stuart Thomas, James Solomon's campaign operative. And folks, that's the problem with Leonard Filipowski. For many, many months, he's fooled you or tried to convince you that he's somehow a legitimate journalist. And I said this before during an ELEC report that came out in May or early June. Leonard, you would think with $10,000 being sent to you in either direct deposit or a check, you would think that Leonard would have thought about maybe, contacting the New Jersey Society of Professional Journalists or the New Jersey Press Association and actually getting real press credentials. Walking around saying you're press doesn't make it so. Okay? I don't have to buy into your delusions. Just like people who think the earth is flat. Sorry, I'm not going to buy into your delusions. Just like people who think that men can become women. I'm also not going to subscribe to that delusion. I'm not going to buy into the delusion that Leonard Filipowski is an actual journalist. He's not. I get it. The Lollipop Guild in Hudson County thinks he is. But people who follow the news or work in the news business, like myself and others, well, folks, we know otherwise. So when you see on his social media platforms any links for a Cash App or a Venmo or a Zelle, you know what that tells you, folks? That tells you that he is hungry for money. Now, is this a guy that maybe will whore himself out for dollars? Maybe, I don't know. But that money train that he used to be on with Tony Hector, yeah, that left the station a long time ago. What he's doing for money now, who knows? Now, if he gets another benefactor, I mean, that's tough to say. But I'll tell you right now, if anyone needs help with their rent, it's definitely Leonard Filipowski. Moving on to local news, folks. And again, please, someone should have told him to delete that photo. But in local news here, there's a little bit of a breakdown here, and certainly I want to, sort of go into real quick here a couple of news items that caught my attention here. Obviously, Newark Mayor Ras Baraka attended an event last week on the south side of Jersey City, where Baraka says he's, quote, not yet, but close to endorsing James Solomon. Now, shout out to Andy Maloney from the Jersey Times for his reporting on this story. Now, it's looking more likely that Wardy Councilman James Solomon could be the recipient of a major endorsement, in part thanks to his alliance with Ward F. Councilman Frank Gilmore. Now, Newark Mayor Ras Baraka was the, quote, special guest at Solomon and Gilmore's Tuesday night fundraiser. And he was asked, as he was leaving, to confirm that he's not endorsing Solomon for mayor of Jersey City, has been previously suggesting and reporting by other news outlets. Now, Baraka replied, quote, not yet, but he's close, as he was escorted into his SUV. A Solomon campaign spokesperson declined comment, which is kind of interesting because Stuart Thomas has an opinion about everything. And this insufferable woman, Stuart Thomas, obviously is never at a loss for words. Kind of interesting that he had nothing to say about Baraka's hesitation right now in this election cycle. Now, Gilmore introduced Solomon to Baraka, his friend, who was previously endorsed by Baraka for another term. And of course, he weighed in on the possible endorsement of Solomon. Gilmore said, quote, I'm working on that, but the only endorsement James needs is me. Now, Solomon and Gilmore previously cross-endorsed each other, as Gilmore is running independent of any mayoral candidate, but has worked together with Solomon on several initiatives in City Hall, like eliminating pool fees and other important issues for Jersey City residents. Right? Folks, I have to tell you, again, great reporting there by the Jersey Times, but I think it begs the question, folks, why this desperate plea for an endorsement from Ras Baraka, folks? Folks, have you been to Newark lately? If you're going to Prudential Center, like friends of mine did last Friday night to go to WWE SmackDown during SummerSlam weekend, yeah, that's great. As you're walking towards Prudential Center, maybe you're parking on Ferry Street in the Ironbound section and having a great dinner at Fornos of Spain. Great restaurant, definitely recommend it. But you just drive 5 minutes in any direction north in Newark, like it's a shithole. So I don't understand this sort of, I don't know, this eagerness or sort of salivating at the mouth that Ras Baraka should be endorsing someone. What exactly is that endorsement going to do? And I get it that Ras Baraka came in second and certainly surprised a lot of people during this primary season, leapfrogging ahead of Stephen Fulop, Sean Spiller, Josh Gottheimer, and Steve Sweeney during the primary for the Democrat Party. And sure, he made some inroads with progressives. Notwithstanding the stunt in front of Delaney Hall, where, folks, that's just performative theater. That's all it was. I don't understand this sort of desperation or this insistence of, like, what does James Solomon think Ras Baraka's endorsement is going to do? I don't think it's going to help him get across the finish line. I mean, again, folks, if you're not in the Ironbound section or in that area near Prudential, folks, Newark's a shithole. Okay? Very much like the south side of Jersey City. I know Uncle David Cruz gets all sensitive and he starts menstruating when you start talking about the south side because, that's where he's from. And, that's his hood, and all that. I get it. But stop being so sensitive if someone calls the neighborhood you live in a shithole, especially when it is. So what exactly is there to brag about when it comes to Newark, folks? I get it. He's a prominent progressive. Okay. He has some ideas that aren't just not possible. That's the problem with progressives. Like, their heart's in the right place, but as usual, their head's up their ass. Because they think that money grows on trees. And somehow we have to keep subscribing to woke bullshit, like pronouns and identity politics. And I get it that's, for people like Stuart Thomas, that sensitive woman in the Solomon campaign, those things matter. But for the rest of Jersey City, what matters, Stuart and James and Roz, is property taxes, parking, public safety. Okay? More services for seniors. Whether or not we can improve the rec program, if there's ever really going to be a rec program to help our youth in Jersey City. See, those are the issues that matter. Not the progressive, narratives that we keep hearing about, again, identity and pronouns and all the woke bullshit. And I get it that women like Stuart Thomas, again, just lives with this perpetual erection in his pants about woke bullshit. I get it. That's you, bro. I mean, that's on you. I don't know what to tell you, honey. But for regular people that care about everyday issues, is Rasta Baraka's message going to resonate in Jersey City, where developers have just hijacked the city, or it's pricing out everyday regular residents in Jersey City, where it's pricing lifers out? Again, folks, not everyone's David Cruz that earns six figures and sits on his ass 6 months out of the year, scratching his ass and playing with his dick at home. There are regular Jersey City residents that actually don't earn that kind of money to work 6 months out of a year. Those are the residents that are concerned about this mayoral cycle. Those are the residents that want to hear from candidates about the issues that matter to everyday Jersey City residents. Again, not the woke bullshit, not whether or not you have pronouns in your email. No one gives a shit about that. I know women like Stuart Thomas do, and progressives in Jersey City do, but adults, not children, like Stuart Thomas and others, adults like yours truly and others, we're thinking about the issues that matter. So I don't know why there's this sort of salivating over Ras Baraka. I mean, again, folks, this is a guy who was able to fundraise off of a performative stunt in front of Delaney Hall. That's all it was. I don't know of any mayor in New Jersey that's going to somehow cite building code violations and is going to serve the paperwork himself. I've never heard of a mayor doing that. That's the fact. So if you don't think that little stunt at Delaney Hall was performative, then by the way, then maybe the New York Jets will win a Super Bowl too. Okay? If you're that gullible and naive, have at it. The residents want to hear about everyday issues. And I just don't think Ras Baraka represents that. So for people that are just constantly and almost eager and desperate for his endorsement, I mean, have at it, but there's more than a progressive base in Jersey City, folks. There's blue-collar Democrats, centrist, independents, conservatives, whoever. They vote in Jersey City, too. It's not just about woke bullshit. Women like Stuart Thomas haven't gotten that memo yet. Chances are he probably never will. But when we're talking about issues that matter to everyday residents, well, that sort of moves me to my next topic here. And again, and thank you to John Hines with Hudson County for his reporting on this story. Well, the current mayor of Jersey City, Stephen Fulop, raised some eyebrows last week by saying openly that McGreevy is poised to be the next Jersey City mayor, as others lack courage. And again, as reported by John Hines, Jersey City Mayor Stephen Fulop said last week that former Governor Jim McGreevy is poised to be his successor, claiming that the candidates currently lack the vision and courage to defeat him in the nonpartisan November 4th race. Quote, "This is smart. As things stand, McGreevy is on track to be the next mayor. Unless the other candidates show some vision or courage, which they haven't, he'll keep gaining ground. The rest are stuck recycling tired lines. Developers bad. Everyone's corrupt. Jersey City is a mess, with no vision beyond those talking points. Their cautiousness on every issue, including MLK Bergen and Baldwin Summit, speaks volumes about how they would lead." Now, his remarks came after a Jersey City resident posted a mailer from McGreevy calling to bring the bus rapid transit BRT to John F. Kennedy Boulevard. Now, last year, Fulop said on a few occasions that he did not think McGreevy could make a December 2025 runoff to become the next mayor, but evidently he is singing a different tune this year. Well, folks, let's be very clear. There is no love lost between Stephen Fulop and Jim McGreevy. We all know the drama that ensued with the Jersey City Reentry Corporation. And obviously what Jim McGreevy does now with the New Jersey Reentry development obviously is to be applauded. The whole Jim McGreevy story is to be applauded. A guy who was governor just over 20 years ago and resigned in disgrace, but has reinvented himself. Found religion, helped others find religion, and he's helped others straighten out their lives. It's made a difference, folks. So for Stephen, and again, we all know that Stephen Fulop has his agenda too. Again, you have to sort of take this, not an endorsement, but this sort of political forecast with a grain of salt. But folks, when someone like Stephen Fulop, who we all know doesn't like Jim McGreevey at all, is saying this out loud, that should be a warning sign. To devoted socialists like Musab Ali, who, let's be honest, if he comes in at 2%, that'll be a miracle, right? And to other candidates like Christina Freeman, Council President Joyce Waterman, County Commissioner Bill O'Day, and of course, current Wardy Councilman James Solomon. That should be a wake-up call to everybody in Jersey City, because even the fact that Stephen Fulop, right now what he's doing is calling balls and strikes. What he's doing right now is calling it down the middle and say, hey, he's not saying it out loud, but if you know Stephen Fulop and you know the dynamics, we all know he doesn't like Jim McGreevey. So for him to put this on paper and even say it openly, folks, that should ring the alarm bells for Jim McGreevey's opponents. Now, I look forward to talking to Jim McGreevey again this fall, as well as the other candidates. Notwithstanding the bullshit of cancel culture that seems to be existing in Jersey City, not really towards me, because I'm not canceled, and newsflash, I'm not going anywhere. Despite what whiny women like Stuart Thomas and others in Jersey City politics will have you believe, I'm not going anywhere. I'm still going to get in traffic. I'm still going to be making money. And I'm still going to be making a difference because people tune into this show. People rely on this show. People have come to understand and really embrace the fact that this is your source for trustworthy, independent journalism. Again, others haven't gotten that memo, and that's fine. Do that at your own peril. And I'll continue talking to candidates going into the fall. Trust me when I tell you, folks, I'll be asking the hard questions because Jersey City residents deserve answers. And trust me, I'll continue giving them to you. I'll continue having the conversations and the dialogues that we need during this election cycle. Not the woke bullshit, not all this about pronouns and coddling, mentally ill people, trans people who somehow think that, I have to embrace their delusion that somehow a man can become a woman when we all know they cannot. So whether it's overly sensitive people in Hudson County, like, I don't know, maybe one of the owners at Pier 13 in Hoboken, or activists in Jersey City, folks, I'm going to be talking about real world issues, not the woke bullshit, not coddling the alphabet mob, not coddling all this progressive nonsense. And I get it, all the social justice clowns and the woke fools and the cancel culture patrol. Yes, Fernando Uribe is in your target area. Well, I'll keep being your target area. And guess what? I'm not going anywhere because I'll keep talking about the issues that matter to you, not just Jersey City residents, Hoboken residents, Hudson County residents, New Jersey residents. That's what makes this show better than everybody else's. Again, folks, in Jersey City, alarm bells sounding. And more than likely, Jim McGreevey, he's getting across that finish line. Mark my words. Coming up in November, Jim McGreevey, very likely, is the next mayor in Jersey City. And those are my final thoughts. Folks, before we call it a night here, once again, I want to thank all of you for tremendous traffic for the month of July. All organic, folks. Nothing boosted. Okay, I'm not vaccinated. And unlike all you vax hysterics out there that are like, triple boosted and everything. Okay, nothing boosted here, folks. All organic traffic on Facebook, on X, LinkedIn, and everything else. Once again, over 47,000 views here on Real Talk. And folks, I cannot thank you enough for your support of this program. Because without you, again, folks, these numbers wouldn't be possible. And without you, my loyal viewing audience, I don't stand out from the establishment legacy media. We all know who they are, right? All the little Mickey Mouse journalists, little Mickey Mouse traffic, and their Mickey Mouse shows. Folks, there's nothing Mickey Mouse here. It's real traffic because it's real conversations because it's real talk. And to those of the establishment media, legacy media, again, what are we learning? You're all dinosaurs. I'm the future. Get that through your heads because I'm not going anywhere. So again, to the dinosaurs and establishment and legacy media, okay, cool. Keep doing what you're doing. And keep putting up shitty traffic and shitty metrics. Trust me when I tell you, the meteor's coming. A lot sooner than you think. And that's our show for this week. Once again, I want to thank David Wildstein, folks, our guest here tonight, the editor of the New Jersey Globe. Please visit NewJerseyGlobe.com for the absolute best coverage of everything going on in New Jersey media, politics, and more. You can always rely on the New Jersey Globe. Make sure you follow them, of course, on X, and also follow them on Facebook. Folks, here on this program, if you haven't done so already, make sure you like Real Talk, Fernando Uribe, and, of course, Fernando Uribe Media on Facebook. Of course, follow us on Instagram and X. Certainly subscribe to us on YouTube at the Jersey First YouTube channel. Again, like, comment, share, and subscribe. And, of course, whether you get your podcast on Spotify or SoundCloud, download Jersey First and take it with you anywhere at any time, especially during these summer days as summer is winding down. I don't know about you folks. I'm done with the summer. Bring on September. Bring back the NFL. Bring back the nice, crisp weather. Pumpkin picking, apple picking. Halloween is around the corner. The baseball playoffs. We start seeing the return of the NHL and the NBA. I love the fall. So, yeah, summer's great. You can go day drinking outside. That's awesome. But I'm waiting for the fall. So, regardless of where you're at, whether you're going down to Point Pleasant for Tiki Mondays there at a Tiki Bar, whether you're going shopping for your kids, whether, again, it's back to school soon, whether it's moving them back to campus or just back to school at the elementary, middle school, and high school level, folks, you're always having your smartphone with you. Trust me. Download Jersey First and subscribe to Jersey First TV, and you'll never be disappointed. Folks, again, I can't say enough about what a privilege it is to be on the dream team of Garden State Media. That's right, folks. Front and center here on Jersey First TV. Of course, always educating and advocating for the residents and the great people here in the state of New Jersey. Brand new episodes of Real Talk air every Monday night, folks. Check your local listings for start times. And again, make it a part of your Monday night viewing here on the Jersey First Television Network. Always remember, folks, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's always Real Talk right here on the Jersey First Television Network. Folks, I'll continue to be the generational talent in Garden State Media because, folks, as the establishment media, legacy media as well, continue to lie to you, guess who won't? That's right. The hero you need right now, Fernando Uribe. Folks, I'll continue to be your trusted source for strong, fearless, independent media here in New Jersey. You can always rely on Real Talk every Monday night. Folks, enjoy the rest of your week. Please party responsibly. Look after your elderly neighbors, your kids. Again, take care of yourselves. And, folks, we appreciate you making Real Talk a routine of yours every Monday night here on the Jersey First Television Network. Thanks for stopping by. And always remember, stay classy, everyone.